Worldview 2, a Brannon House television network.
The Tamara Scott Show. Tamara has served as the state director for one of America's largest pro-life, pro-family public policy organizations. In 2007, Tamara was named one of America's top 10 most influential kingmakers by the Religion News Association. Tamara has spent years proclaiming and defending the values of a Christian worldview that is the foundation of our constitutional republic. And now, here is your host, Tamara Scott.
Hey everybody, welcome. I am Tamara Scott. It is the Tamara Scott Show, where we help you live God's Word in today's world when the headlines hit home. And we want you to stay focused in what you're doing, what God's plan is for you, so we don't get caught up in them. Because we figured out in 2020, 2021, whoever they are, if they can make you unsteady, make you uncertain, keep you guessing, make you fearful, then you're vulnerable, you're malleable. So we keep you focused on what God has for you, a plan for your life. We do let you know what's happening in the world around you, so one, you can be a part of it, take action where needed, or prayer where you should, and know how to guide those prayers. Of course, the Holy Spirit always knows. But then as well, just so you're aware, but you can continue to strategize what's best for your family and that plan God gave you. Joining me today is Representative Cindy Golding. She is one of the rock stars in the Iowa State House, and one of, I think, every so often, people elect folks from their district, and you get a reflection of their district. Every so often, you get somebody who is just well-rounded and has experience in a lot of different areas. Representative Golding would be that person. It doesn't happen a lot. We can't expect legislators to know every issue that's going to come before them. They shouldn't, and we don't want them to act like they do. No one does. But I appreciate it when we have people who have well-rounded experiences and they can speak to a lot of the issues with some background, not just book knowledge, not just what the people in the Capitol are saying to them, the lobbyists who want the bill, the bureaucrats are going to have job security because of it. No, it's just good to have someone like Cindy, and she's distinguished herself as a competent and insightful legislator who studies proposed bills, seeks out and listens to constituents, whether she agrees or not, and fights to preserve their rights and their freedom. So, Representative Golding, thank you for joining me today.
Well, good afternoon, Tamara. Hi.
I'm trying to.
I found a cubby hole in the Capitol here, so we have about 20 minutes or so undisturbed, I hope.
All right, let's roll. Take us through it right now. You have a couple different things: the REINS Act, and you have the Property Tax Bill. That's a lot of chatter up here in Iowa right now. So where do you want to start, Representative?
Well, I think we need to start with the property tax, because that has been a conversation. Actually, it's one of the reasons I ran back in 22. I have been an investor. I'm a property owner. We have farms, we have commercial. I've been involved in the real estate industry for well over 40 years. So not once upon a time as a licensed realtor, but property tax has been a problem, and it's not just a problem in Iowa, it's a problem all across the nation as we hear about uncontrolled spending and assessments that go out of line. And in Iowa, our property tax system is a convoluted mess. It takes a lot to try to figure out what your taxes are going to be. The way it works right now, I got more letters from constituents when the assessments came out last spring in 25 than any other topic since I have been serving. And I started in January of 23. There were a lot of hot topics going on. So assessments is one of the problems. Of course, in 25, they reflected Bidenflation. Then I represent a rural district. It is the second largest county in the state of Iowa, so quite populous, but my district wraps around the cities and represents many of the small towns. And one of the complaints I heard from the city councils, I go to every one of my city councils, I go to their meetings, I hear what they have to say. I've visited with superintendents, the school superintendents, and my district touches 14 different school districts. So I've heard their concerns. One of the big concerns they share, and it's legitimate, is that there is what is called a rollback that is determined every year around October, and that lets them know what their tax income, what their tax revenue is going to be for them to make their budget that's due in April. And the problem with that, the way a rollback works is, for example, if your house has a $100,000 assessed value and the rollback is 44%, which it is this year, you pay taxes on $44,000, not $100,000. But the formula to determine that rollback is, I've tried to figure it out myself, and quite frankly, it is it's very difficult. It's a convoluted mess. Like I said, our property tax bill is, it ties different properties together, and you can't even determine if the numbers they're using are accurate. My first year as a legislator, they had made a mistake on the rollback, and they told the cities they would get, the rollback would be 54%, which means that they would get taxes on 54% of the property. Then they said, oh no, it's different. And it cut the amount of income they would get by 2%. That's when I became aware of how serious this problem is. So I proposed a.
When you say 2%, doesn't sound like much, but we're talking how much?
Millions of dollars. So it's 2% difference on what you would pay as a property owner, but think of all the property owners combined, you total that up, but that's 2% less for your schools, for your cities, for your counties, for everybody that's depending on that tax. And they can't even do any future planning because they don't know what their tax base is going to be. In Iowa, we have a law that says that properties must be reassessed every 2 years. Well, so we start with that, with my bill, and I propose to freeze the assessments where they are for 3 years. And during that 3 years, we currently have a 44% rollback, which means you pay on 44% of your property. Then next year you would pay on 47%. Your assessment wouldn't change. You'd pay on 47%. The next year you would pay on 50%. Your assessment hasn't changed. So each year the taxing authority is guaranteed 3% more to help with some of the inflationary pressures that are on the schools, the cities, the counties. When the assessment reaches 50%, when the rollback reaches 50%, which would be 3 years from now, then we would freeze that rollback at 50% from now on. It would be 50% of the value of your property. At that point, then your property assessment can go up by the CPI, the Consumer Price Index for the Midwest. So for example, this year it was 2.7%. So if you had that $100,000 house and the CPI is 2.7%, it would go up to $102,000. So it goes up by the CPI. So that way the cities, the counties, the schools know that they will have a guaranteed income flow. They can make their future planning budgets. Homeowners, property owners, they know what to plan for their taxes, and they're not hit with this out of sight assessment. My bill allows then for no changes in the agriculture formula, no changes in what is currently the TIF program, which is tax incremental financing. Many of our small communities depend on that. We would not change how commercial real estate tax. Right now, if you have a commercial property, it's taxed at 90%. That would stay frozen just like the residential. And then when we hit the 50% rollback, then that commercial property could go up by the CPI for commercial property, that same CPI. The other part of this is that, and it also freezes the levies. It freezes the amount that the cities, the schools can tax where it is today. If they need to raise money, my bill says that the citizens have the right to do what is called a reverse referendum, meaning the city proposes it needs $10 million more in their budget proposal. Then if the citizens see the budget proposal, you get 10% of the number of people who voted in the last election. So that to sign a petition to force it to a vote. And so this is truly local control. The three other bills that have been proposed here in Iowa, there's the Senate bill, the governor's bill, and the House bill. They all put handcuffs on our local governments on what they can spend. I'm all in favor of keeping them in control, keeping this spending in control. But I believe that the local citizens should have a right to say, we don't have a swimming pool, we want a swimming pool, or we want to expand our park system, that they should have the right to do that. That at the state, we are not determining what is good for Des Moines is not good for Little Prairieburg. That we have very different issues in our cities all across the state.
And you take it from 10% of the people who were in the last election. So that would be a last general election.
Yes, last general election.
Which is all the more reason for people to get involved and
Yes.
be a part of the process. And then those folks vote on whether or not they allow. So because we have bonds go through, we have referendums go through for school spending, but this, when you call it a reverse referendum, why the word reverse referendum? It would be.
So the way it works now, so I first had it that they would have to do a referendum for everything, but you know how much an election costs. And let's say one of my little towns needed to do some work on their sewer system and their roads, and they were going to have to increase the funding. Well, that would require them to go to the cost of an election. Now, if they put their budget forward and the citizens know that they need a new sewer system and they need to fix these roads, and the city proposes a $10 million increase, if the citizens don't object, they don't have to go to the expense of an election. So unlike what some of the other ones are capping them at 2%. So when you have inflation much higher than 2%, and communities say they want some of these improvements, they are willing to pay more, I don't believe the state should be putting that cap on it. I believe that the local citizens should have a right to say, we agree with this. Here's the caveat for that, is that it requires the citizens to pay attention. So as I said, when we started, I got more complaints, more letters, more frustration about what their assessments were. And when I wrote back to everyone and said, your taxes are determined by the levy from your city and your school board. Then I asked the city council members, did anybody come to your budget hearing? No. I asked the school board members, have people come to your school board meetings? No. So the problem is that people are saying, I don't like to pay this much money, but then they want the state to fix it. But if we fix it for Des Moines and Cedar Rapids, that's causing tremendous problems in communities like Springville and Ely. So I believe that the cities and the citizens should be able to do what they want to do, but it takes participation. So my bill says they can raise those taxes unless you say no.
Okay.
So,
Interesting. And to your point, we have rural counties, we have urban areas, suburban areas. So there is a wide span. All right. All right. Anything more on the property tax bill?
no, it's just that so there are 3 bills out there now. If you like this proposal, I do have a bill number now. It got a bill number this morning.
Today.
It's House File 2577. If you like this approach, please let people know, because as I said, this is not the approach that's already been publicized from the Senate bill, the House bill, and the governor's bill. And the other thing I'd like to say is, I don't believe, so my bill does not take away any of like the homestead credit, the veterans credit, the senior credit, doesn't take anything away. So those credits still stand. But one of the proposals said that seniors shouldn't have to pay real estate taxes. I don't believe that one segment of our community should be exempted and put that burden on another segment. And specifically, the senior bill, this holds things, if people know what their house is worth, it holds their assessment where it is. But if we say that we seniors don't have to pay taxes, that dumps that whole burden on our young families. And we need them in our communities. So, and we all use the services. The road goes past my house, just like it goes past their house, and that road needs to be fixed with taxes.
It's interesting because I talked to people about that. I would like to see some kind of a protection there so that women who are widowed, who have lived there their whole lives, their families were raised there, are not ousted because of a greedy government or an overspending local government that can't control their budget. I would like to see some protection there, but I do see what you're saying. I've also heard it tossed around about veterans, some type of a break for veterans. And as much as I love my military and appreciate their service, I don't like to see us separated into classes. I think that's a dangerous way to go. So, all right, anything else on this bill? It's 5 HF 2577. You now have a number. I will tell our viewers, check out the other ones. I've got concerns with the governor's bill. We'll talk about that in another show. But on that bill, it was going to take away who you elect, who you have the ability to elect at the county level, which is just, to me, a fright. That is yours to do. And if there's one thing that people are concerned about, you say your property tax assessments, guess who's not elected by the people? The assessor. That's the one position appointed. So I really don't want to see any more appointed. I want to see them elected. All right. Anything else? Do we have time to go to the REINS Act, or do you need to go?
No, I have about 3 more minutes. So the REINS Act, it's REINS, and that is something that's being pushed at the federal level and now at the state level. We don't have a bill number yet, but it is an act that would require departments to justify their budgets. Any line item over 200,000 would have to be a line item from the legislature, and any rule that would impose more regulations on business or on industries, on citizens, would have to have a justification and how much impact that would be, economic impact. And it would give legislative overview for all these rules and regulations. Because right now we have a terrible problem in many areas, and Iowa's not exempt from this. We have people who have been in bureaucratic positions for years. They make decisions, they cost tax dollars money, they put regulations on people, and they are unelected. So this brings back some accountability for those departments back to a legislative body that the people, that we respond to our constituents. These departments, bureaucrats do not.
Unelected bureaucrats have been the issue in many, many, many of our problems in this nation, federally and in state. All right. Anything else, Representative Golding?
Not at this point. We have some election bills that there's a group in Iowa that's called the Iowa Canvassing Group, and they look at voter rolls, and they've been giving me data about who they have found, people who've died, people who've moved, we have 55 people in Des Moines, in Polk County, who use UPS and FedEx as their legitimate voting address. Are these legitimate voters? That's up for discussion. So my voting bills are there to not change, but to ensure that our elections are safe and only voters vote, only, approved, legitimate voters vote. We're not seeing any movement in the Senate. So again, if you care about election integrity, you might need to get in touch with your senators to say, we need to do this. Again, I'm from Linn County, the second largest county. Maybe some of the problems we see are not occurring in some of the small counties. but I can guarantee they're occurring in Lynn County and Polk County.
All right. Lynn County is the second largest county. Okay, very good. Representative Cindy Golding, thank you for taking time out to explain the property tax bill. You're putting it back on the people. They're going to have to be engaged. And that almost concerns me because it is so hard to get people engaged, but we complain. We can't be enraged if we won't be engaged. There you go.
That's right. If they really care about what they're paying, they need to pay attention to the budget. So thank you very much.
Yep, we should be anyway. That's ours to do. All right, parting words?
Nope. I just keep up the good work, Tamara. I love working with you, and we'll get the job done.
Thank you. So glad you are there. Representative Cindy Golding, we are just blessed and thankful. Iowa has some really great legislators right now. I'm sure you do in your state as well, but it's supposed to be a representative republic, the few watched by the many, and the many too often are sleeping. We're not paying attention. And I get it. Government is so involved. They've overreached. They have their authority is much wide. Their power they're using is much wider than the authority they have. That's the issue, which is my whole issue with this Convention of States. Everything we need to fix every issue we're dealing with is already in the Constitution. We're just not using it. As Brad Sherman, congressional candidate for Iowa, has said, the Constitution doesn't need fixed, it needs followed. And we have not done that for so long, as we've shared with you on this show as well. Michael Boyle is going to join me pretty soon. We're going to talk about the South Dakota happenings as well. I think I have just a couple minutes. Thomas, do you want me to wait for my break or go ahead and take my break? Let me just go ahead, and I hate to do it and then just come right back. So let me just go ahead and we'll just do a double break at 12:30. How's that? We'll just put it all in there. All right, so a couple things, and I'll try and get to them a little bit more later on. South Dakota, Michael's going to give us an update on that. There was another hearing this morning. They smoked out the COS bill. And so 1/3 vote, that's all it takes, 1/3 vote to get it now back up for discussion. So apparently they'll probably have a vote on that. Cindy was talking, Representative Golding was talking about your elected officials. Here's my concern. In South Dakota, they ousted several incumbents. We were all thrilled when it happened. However, the new folks were not familiar with the Convention of States. The false promises made. They didn't know Kitty Worthman. She'd since passed away, and she was one of those folks who were there that gave great information, and the other side countering the pro-COS or the COS proponents, the Political Action Group, Convention of States, who we are learning we have to be very careful to go through their statements on what they say. So the folks who are new bought it hook, line, and sinker. And because they had to stand up against government, a lot of people think that a Convention of States is standing up against government. But as Santorum says in his own speech on the 11th, he admitted, I don't know if I can find it. I don't know if I can put it up for you without even just doing the audio. Let me see if I can. But he admitted that likely, I've talked about this for a long time. Makes what, $333,000? And he goes around telling us how it's likely not going to happen. A convention's we're probably not going to get called. And if we do, really nothing too drastic is going to happen. And I say, I've said this before. How does he say that when they're well aware of Professor Lessig, Harvard professor, let me see if I can find his little article here. Harvard professor. Is this in 2016? Remember the election where people were saying, don't vote your electoral ballot, change it. And he was offering free legal funds, I think, to people who would free legal counsel to any elector who might face legal consequence by switching their vote away from Trump. And one of the other members said, gosh, Electoral College member said, if that is not a bribe or it just borders on bribery, carried to the extreme, the day might come when an elector would be sold to the highest bidder. And I'm telling you, Professor Lessig is a proponent of the Convention of States. If he's willing to do that, for the Electoral College, what do you think he would be willing to do or to see at a convention? He's made it known in his book that he wants to abolish the Electoral College at a convention. He wants a convention to abolish the Electoral College. That is in the New American 2016, December 17th, 2016. He wants to abolish the Electoral College. Think that through. All right. And he said he founded a call for convention August 2013 on page 293 of his 2011 book, Republic Lost: How Money Corrupts Congress, and a plan to stop it. And yet he's the one offering free legal counsel, which I think is acceptable. But to someone else's point, you're trying to persuade them to change their vote. That's where it gets a little iffy. And so he admits a constitutional convention has never happened, but one final plausible strategy for forcing fundamental reform onto Congress. Because then he goes on to say, and let me see if I can find it, he's offered abolition of the Electoral College as one of the objectives that could be achieved at any convention. And yet you hear Santorum continually say nothing will happen, nothing radical will happen. Remember, we played on the show on Tuesday his testimony whining about 75% of the vote. Can you imagine if you had to have 75% of the vote to pass a controversial bill? Well, first off, that's the point. We don't want you passing controversial bills. We may not want that part. We don't want to make it easy for you to do something that we don't all, or a majority of us, don't agree with, a large majority. All right, so he wants the Electoral College abolished, and then he said in here that he wants to rewrite the Constitution. Think that through. He wants to rewrite the Constitution. When asked about a runaway convention, he said, well, let's welcome one. Yet they tell us nothing too drastic will happen. We'll be right back. Michael Boyle from South Dakota will join us.
Do you like drinking toxins that could cause cancer, inflammation, and all kinds of other autoimmune diseases? Of course you don't. Well, much of our water in America is full of toxins. That's a proven fact. WorldviewWater.net. WorldviewWater.net is your solution so that you can drink good, clean water. In fact, I give it to all my 3 fur babies, all my 3 dogs. I have one under my kitchen sink, one of these filters, as well as on my shower. WorldviewWater.net.
I need to tell you about our Bella Grace. The slender little sachet has the elixir with the collagen, astaxanthin, and cat's paw. In 2022, got an award for helping with cognitive function, and in 2023 in the sports arena for active ingredients, nutrition, and format. But the best is what we hear from so many of you. You have noticed better joint health, improved mobility, less eye strain and fatigue, helping with computer vision syndrome, visual acuity, depth perception, alleviating dry eyes, but also helping with your immunity, your stress management, endurance, less fatigue overall, not just eye fatigue, muscle recovery, mental clarity, focus, and gut health. Then there's the fun list. The firmer, smoother skin texture, fewer fine lines and wrinkles, improved skin elasticity, decreased age spots, or even skin tone, improved skin hydration, reduce oxidative stress, healthier nails, less cellulite, hair health, better sleep. Who wouldn't want any of those? Call them beauty items if you wish, but who doesn't want to feel a little bit better or more confident when you're going to present in the public square, when you're going to speak at a city council? And who just doesn't want to feel a little healthier? Maybe they're just byproducts of being healthier. More information at tamara.bellagraceglobal.com, tamara.bellagraceglobal.com. All right, joining us, do we have Michael? Is he in the room? Michael Boyle from South Dakota has been actively fighting against a convention of states, a constitutional convention, Article 5 convention, call it what you like, but it puts our Constitution at risk. Thank you for joining me, Michael.
Thank you for having me, Tamara.
Hey, and I know you've only got a short time. I'm trying to find very quickly something that Santorum said, and you sent it to me, and I listened to the speech. You sent me the speech on Tuesday, and there was so much in there. I went back to 104 when he started. There was so much in there. I was so irritated that I didn't even get to the part you said. There was so much concerning material in there. I'm not sure they don't want to change the ratification process when he's griping about it taking 75% to do anything on ratification. I am not convinced they won't change the ratification process. Are you?
No, I would not be convinced that they wouldn't want to do that. But the interesting thing is, on the one hand, when he went up to testify the first time, he said, Article 5 is the way that you, the state legislators, can put yourself on top of the food chain in the government. And in the sense of the states are going to be running the federal government, in his mind, that's how the founders wanted it. And so that's what he said on the front side to get people, the legislators, to think that this was a good thing. But then when they said, "Oh, hey, could this actually do something that would harm our Constitution?" On the end, he said, "Oh no, nothing bad is going to happen." He said, "We're not going to get a balanced budget. We're not going to really get any cuts to spending. All we could really expect is maybe to say that we should only have 9 justices on the Supreme Court, and that nothing controversial would ever come out of a convention." And so it's kind of like, on the one hand, let's say, hey, this is the solution to all of our problems. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, this isn't actually going to solve any of our problems. And if that's the case, why are we risking our entire Constitution for something that is never actually going to move the needle culturally or even in our government? And so obviously, I don't think necessarily either of those are true, but it's what the legislators are being told. And if we don't come alongside and say, hey, that's not really accurate, this isn't what the founding fathers gave us, it's not how we're going to take over the federal government for certain. What we actually need to do is look to Article 6, which is the oath of office. And we need to get back to following and obeying the Constitution, not trying to continue over and over again to change it.
Absolutely. The issue is not the Constitution. There is no lack of content in the Constitution that needs changed. It is a lack of character in Congress that needs corrected. That's what we're dealing with. All right. So he also pushed to the states, when he told them to be the top of the food chain, he pushed them to the idea that they needed to take back the amendment, so they put the senators, U.S. senators, forward. I don't know where you're at on that. I don't know where I'm at on that. It's to the people right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the 17th Amendment was a bad decision because it really upset the cycle that the brilliant cycle that the founders had put in place, which was at the federal level. Taxes were actually collected by the states, and the states were the ones, that controlled the senators. And so legislators, the House would go out and tell all these people, hey, we're going to raise all this money and we're going to do all these great things for you. And they would pass these bills and they would go over to the Senate. And then the Senate would call up their state legislature counterparts and say, hey, do you want to raise taxes for all these wonderful programs? And the legislators would say, absolutely not. Don't be spending any money. And so the Senate would shoot a lot of that stuff down. Well, we passed the Federal Reserve Act, and we passed, the senators being directly elected by the people. And so those checks and balances were really defeated by those two legislations. And so that's allowed us to have these, huge deficit spending and senators not really being the check on the people's desires for this, that, and the other thing that they were designed to be.
So here's my concern on it, because I understand what you're saying, but here's my concern on it. Who's got their hand out? State legislators. States accept that program. Every dollar that comes back, very rarely do we do a nullification, which is what we're telling them. They have, in his speech, he lays out to them how they were the ones that the founders brilliantly put in place for checks and balances. All right. But nullification is something that they could use to say no to Washington. It's an obligation. It's not an opportunity. It's an obligation our founders talked about when there's a law that comes down that is not constitutional, that is overstepping authority, that is not within their purview as a federal government. The state is supposed to say no, but we don't. Yes. We don't. Yes. And often it's tied to money. I think OMVI, I think legal drinking limits were tied to transportation money at one point. So that's my concern, is I don't see our state senators state legislators saying no when they could. Instead, they're the ones with their hands out saying, we need this Washington money. That's my concern
Yeah.
with redistricting.
And Robert Brown talks about this in his talk on the harsh reality of the Convention of States. The reality is our federal or our founders did not look to this idea of having a convention to fix our problems. Obviously, if there was a structural problem in our government, like there was under the Articles of Confederation, then yeah, they did throw that out and got us a new constitution. But this constitution has lasted 250, well, not quite 250 years, but 230 some. And it is a good constitution. The problem is not the constitution, it's that we aren't following it. And in the Federalist Papers, it said that state legislators take an oath to the Constitution of the federal government and to their state legislatures because they're the ones that have to give effect to the Constitution. And too many of them are employees, at least in their minds, are employees or servants of the federal government rather than the regulators or the ones who are giving effect to our Constitution. And so rather than standing up and saying, you don't have the authority to do this, they say, well, and I heard a legislator on the House floor in South Dakota a few years ago say, our job is just to manage the rights of our people, not to tell the government, federal government, what to do. And that is the exact opposite of what our founders had desired for our legislators. And really to speak to the Article 5 component, I don't know if you had a chance to read through this federal judge decision called Thompson versus Masterson. But he pointed out what has been long-standing Supreme Court precedent is that the Article 5 convention is not going to be run by the states. It's not going to be run by state constitutions, by state law, by the state legislatures. This is a federal process, just like we have federal representatives. And South Dakota tried to put term limits on our federal representatives, and we were not allowed to because they're not our representatives. They're not state representatives. They're federal representatives. And so when these delegates are selected to go to a constitutional convention, they are not going to be following state law. They're not going to be following the state constitution or the state legislature's edicts. They are going to be going there and being under federal law, which means it's Congress that is going to tell us how the Constitutional Convention is going to run. It's Congress that is going to set up the initial rules. And so this idea that this is what is going to be used by the state legislatures to rein in the federal government is really a bait and switch. It's not actually at all. We apply to Congress. Congress will call the convention. They'll set up the rules. They'll set up the number of delegates for each state. All of that will be done by Congress. And when the convention of states says, hey, we're going to take it to the Supreme Court, we're going to take it to this, that, and the other court, well, the federal court has already told us how they're going to rule. And that is that what Congress might choose to do with the application that the states put in is up to Congress to decide. It's really Congress's role to set the rules and the procedures. And in that decision, he said a vote to apply for a convention is simply a vote to convene. You can write all these wherefores and whereases and whatever you want to put in there, but the only really operating language in an application is we apply for an Article 5 convention. Everything else is just there to make you feel good about it. It won't hold up. It won't be limiting. It's Congress that has the control on an Article 5 convention. And so if we trust Congress, then we don't really need an Article 5 convention because they can do it. They can propose an amendment now. And if we don't trust Congress, we certainly don't need an Article 5 convention.
Opening up if it's bad enough, we don't think we can get them to pass a constitutional amendment or repeal a constitutional amendment, like we were talking about with the U.S. Senator being appointed by the state Senate. We can appeal that. Santorum talked about the appeal of the Prohibition Amendment. So it's possible. But if we don't trust Congress to listen to us, if enough states came out, and I do believe if enough states came forward and said it, they would listen. It might take some years. It might take some time. If Convention of States, that political action group that seems to be very well funded and deep pocketed, would have spent some of their time actually helping us fix problems rather than causing problems for us, taking time away and wasting it on this idea of a Convention of States, a constitutional convention, we could have fixed some of these already. I do believe we could have fixed some of them already. But give us the court case again that you just mentioned, and that quote about all you do is convene. A call to convention is to convene.
Yes, the court case is very recent. It's from November of 2025, so very recent. It's called Thompson versus Masterson, and it's actually where the Convention of States people took the leadership of the Kansas legislature to court because the Kansas state constitution required a 2/3 vote if they were going to call for an application for an Article 5 convention. And so they took that to court and said, we should not have to obey that 2/3 requirement because this is a federal process. And the judge agreed with them. And so the COS people went to court and really undermined their own talking points that the states are going to be in control and said, no, it's the federal government that's in control. That's why we don't have to follow this. And you'll hear Rick Santorum agree with that. He said it's a supremacy issue. The U.S. Constitution is over the state constitution. And that's really the point, is the states are not going to control this process. It's a federal process that'll be run by the federal government, and Congress is the one that decides how these federal rules will be put out. But the quote is, a vote to apply for a convention is simply a vote to convene.
Wow. And then once it starts, I don't care if Congress makes up the rules. We know once a convention starts, they can suspend the rules. They make the rules in convention. So not even Congress will have control at that point. And I get so tired of these guys acting like only conservative Republicans are going to show up. Minnesota, who will they send? You think the people walking the streets to protect rapists and murderers won't show up at our convention? Do you think WEF, WHO, and other globalists outside of the nation won't show up to have influence? And I just talked about Lessig wanting to rewrite the Constitution and abolish the Electoral College. That's the reason he wants one of these. Gavin Newsom wants one to put in the 28th Amendment to undo the Second Amendment, which is our gun rights. All right, so thank you for bringing up Kansas, because Santorum brought that up in his speech. As Kansas being the 20th state, they just came along. He doesn't say we had no respect for the process. We had no respect for the people of Kansas. We totally raided what they did and took them to court and beat them up over it. Why would we trust him on a ratification is your safety net, on we won't get anything concerning past or radical past, when they're willing to take states to court over their own state constitution?
Absolutely. And we have to remember, when they say, hey, there is this safety net, we've only had one of these conventions before. We've only had one constitutional convention in our nation's history, and that was under the Articles of Confederation. Under the Articles, it was one state, one vote. And so they gathered one state, one vote. But what did they do? They rewrote the Constitution. They changed the number of states required for ratification. And so the process was entirely changed. That's the only precedent we have. So when we say, hey, we have these safety nets, they're really only there on paper, because the only reality or example that we have, those safety nets, which were that every single state legislature had to approve, no state legislature approved any amendments to the Article 5 convention. And even Congress was supposed to approve under the Articles of Confederation. And they received the Constitution. And what they said was, we don't even have the authority to approve this thing, because it's an entirely different document, entirely different structure of government. And so they sent it on to the states to consider it, but they didn't vote for it because they feel like they even had the authority, because it was an entirely new constitution. And so these safety nets, they might be there on paper, but the only practical reality or example we have, it didn't hold up at all.
And so when we hear about that ratification being our safety net, that it would take 38 states, and 38 states won't do that unless they change ratification. As you're talking about, the new Constitution was passed or ratified by the new Constitution of 75% rather than unanimously in the Articles of Confederation. So they lowered ratification for their changes right there. They lowered the ratification 25% to get the new one ratified. What happens if they have this convention, and I'm told there are at least 5 or 6 substitute constitutions. I'm told one of them has a referendum as a ratification process, which would totally destroy this nation. We saw that with the pro-abortion referendums coming through after Dobbs v. Jackson. I'll give you a chance to comment. I know you have to run. I wish you could stay, but I'll give you a chance to comment.
Yeah, and I really do think, what have we been primed by the left is one person, one vote, right? One person, one vote. And that idea of democracy, democracy, democracy has really been programmed into our minds in the human collective, or at least in America. And so I really do think the most likely thing to come out of a constitutional convention would be that it would only require a majority of the people individually across the country to put in the new Constitution, and it would make it much easier to amend the Constitution. And I know here in South Dakota, unfortunately, our Constitution is being destroyed by special interest groups that get an idea of what they want, and they're willing to spend millions of dollars to put ideas in people's minds that they didn't really have about themselves. But it really does hurt the state and the country when we change our Constitution. It causes division, unrest. It's not a good idea. But I'll look forward to coming on and talking about this issue more in the future.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us today, Michael Boyle from South Dakota. We'll be right back, and I'll try and talk about some of those issues that he mentioned from the words of Santorum in his own testimony when he was complaining about 75% being too high. You have to wonder what the concern is, and we'll stay tuned. We'll be right back with his own words. This is our new NutraSwish, Numi NutraSwish. You can find more information at neumi.com/TTSS. neumi.com/TTSS, one of the products we offer because you all have different preferences and respond differently to different items. So this is our lavender. It's for ladies anywhere along your journey. No hormones in it, but if you're taking a hormonal supplement, you might want to check with your doctor. The blue is for anyone over the age of 18. It has the glutathione, which is a antioxidant, helps with over 400 cellular functions, and it helps detox heavy metals, forever chemicals, graphene oxide, one of those terms we learned after 2020, and it helps detox glyphosate. The good glutathione helps detox glyphosate. Glyphosate is found in ag chemicals or lawn chemicals, and some are very concerned about possible links to cancers, HPVs, and diabetes. But the blue bottle, the glutathione, helps detox heavy metals, forever chemicals, graphene oxide, and glyphosate. Then there's the mango-colored bottle you see on your screen. Numi Neuro helps with your mind, your memory, and your focus. Now, again, after 2020, we heard something about brain fog, a term we'd not heard before. Whether it's from a virus or a vaccine, many have found relief, a little help, with Numi Neuro, the mango-colored bottle. When used with the blue bottle, it is so positive that the American Brain Council wrote about it, and it looked like an endorsement. Though we're told they don't write endorsements, it was simply a positive review of what they saw. You can find more information at neumi.com/TTSS, neumi.com/TTSS. TMRA.com/TTSS for the Tamara Scott Show. Why? Because we want you feeling your best. And when you use that TTSS link, you help us be our best. So I'm wanting to play for you Santorum. We didn't have it loaded into the big computer through the studio, so I was going to play it for you just here. And now I'm getting the death disc on my own computer. I don't know why. So we'll see if it settles back down and I can play it. I will tell you at, doggone it. All right, so you go ahead and play, Thomas, you go ahead and play Robert Kelly if you can. I think it's what, 127? We just want to remind people what they say they want to do. This is Convention Estates staff attorney Robert Kelly several years ago.
Dealing with Congress. Because guess what? Congress is part of the problem. It opens up Article 2. Why? Because the president is part of the problem. It opens up Article 3. Why? Because the Supreme Court is part of the problem. It allows us Article 5 to be considered so that the states don't have to go through this convoluted process in the future, so that if 3/4 of the states agree in advance, they could propose amendments to the Constitution. It opens up these articles because the problem is not in an isolated single branch of the federal government. It's the president, it's the Supreme Court, and it's Congress. And if we limited ourselves to just touching one of those, we're not going to fix the problem. We're just going to shift the problem from Congress to now the president's just going to pass more executive orders doing whatever he wants. We're going to have more lawlessness. No, we need to address the problem as a whole. That's why our application is worded the way it is. That's why it's so broad. But I'll point out, it does have meaningful limits. Mr. Lewis said it doesn't have meaningful limits. It does. It's limited to limiting the government. And yes, I used the word limit there twice. It's limited to limiting the government. So it has a direction. It's like a one-way door. You can't expand the power of the government under our application, but you can limit it. That's what we want. That's how our application is limited.
Stop.
We want.
Please stop. I'm sorry, I should have stopped you earlier. But they're changing Articles 1, 2, 3, and 5. That's what they're saying so far. 1, 2, 3, and 5. Why 5? That's the Article 5 in which they're using or misusing to get this convention called. It's also the ratification process. We played Tuesday, Santorum whining about 75% being so high. I'm going to see if I can play this now. Hang on.
Not a benefit. It's really hard to make changes to take something away from people. But one of the things that you can do is you can stop bad things from happening. And
okay, so he's talking about he's going to try and do the court thing, packing the court with 9. So he's saying it's too hard to take away benefit. So they're not even going to come after your entitlement anymore. They're not going to try and take things away. I've heard this at the Iowa State House, which, by the way, this COS made it through the committee today. Final is this Friday. We'll see what happens, but it's sad. Whatever it is, the hold that forces or causes some Republicans to do this, because it's not a Republican idea. The RNC has a resolution opposing this since 2012. It is not a conservative idea. You don't toss out your Constitution. That's a radical idea. That's not conservative in any way, right? Preserving and upholding our Constitution, following it, that's a conservative manner. That's what we do. To try something this far out is when we have Lessig saying he wants to rewrite it, Gavin Newsom saying he wants to basically gut the Second Amendment with the 28th Amendment on gun restriction. Lessig saying he wants to abolish the Electoral College, and yet Republicans are supporting this in today's political climate. Seriously? All right, so I'm going to try and see if I can find this a little bit more, see if I can jump up here. I'm just gonna keep it playing.
One of the things I talk about all the time is the idea of having a amendment that is proposed and I think would be ratified to limit the Supreme Court to 9 people.
So same thing they did in the 70s with Phil Shapley. They grabbed her life amendment, said we'll do it at a convention. She said, I will find a way to protect life. Another way, I will not support a convention, and told other people do not support a convention. So this PAC 9, it's popular, we'll grab it. Just like they were using term limits, they were using a balanced budget. But now he says in here, we won't get a balanced budget passed. That's what I'm trying to find. Let's keep going. But they're just grabbing anything. Remember, on tape, we have Michael Ferris, a friend that I have worked with in former groups on former issues, saying, well, he'd like to see a Supreme Court with 50 Supreme Court justices like the European Court. Is that what you want to see? Because that's not a Supreme Court. That's a whole nother chamber. Again, changing government. opening Articles 1, 2, and 3, overhauling government as we know it. I want to get him past this. Let's just
That would
go.
be an important thing to do. It would send an important signal to both parties.
So do it as an
The
amendment
is
through
not the right way to
Congress.
go, that trying to seize control of the federal government.
How am I doing on time,
through,
Thomas?
Through means is not the right thing to do. You could do that. That's the kind of thing that I think would come out of a convention. Radical things. I
There,
hear people
here.
talk about, oh, we're going to balance the budget. We're going to do all these things. You're not going to get 38 states to vote for those things. You're going to get 38 states to do things that keep the guardrails on. And more importantly, why I'm so much in favor of you folks having a convention is because you assert yourself.
You can assert yourself without tossing the Constitution. You don't have to burn it down to save it. This is what I don't understand about the scorch earthers. I get the frustrations. That's what they're building on. People who are frustrated. That's why they're getting so far with the term limits. But you have term limits. It's called an election. And we've given you the statistics on this show. Very few of your legislators, your congressional members here in Iowa, but at the U.S. House and Senate are there past 6 years. It's a small percentage. It's not a majority in most places. In the Senate, maybe a little more so because it takes 6 years for a term to be up. So it's only once every 6 years is someone elected or not elected. All right, did you hear what he said? He just gave up on the balanced budget amendment, which they have used as one of their top things they were going after in a convention. He just gave up on it, said it'll never happen. The guy who's getting paid over $333,000 a year just told you it's not going to happen unless they change the ratification process, which they just told you in the other video with Robert Kelly. They want to change Article 5. I'm telling you, this is not safe. In today's political climate, when you have people in the streets protecting people who are here illegally, who've come into this country as criminals, who have charges of whether rape or murder, we have people going after the ICE agents that are coming after them. Do you not think those same people would be possessed, driven, persuaded to show up at a convention? And do you think if you can't trust congressional members who are worried about getting your vote for re-election are going to hold to any type of a pledge or an oath if they're not upholding the oath of the Constitution? Why would they be concerned with the rules or the commissions they were sent to the convention with when there's only supposedly one convention? But remember, we have Santorum on tape twice in South Dakota. Thomas, do I have time to play those two sound bites from South Dakota? Not really. We have him saying he wants a convention every 5 years. Think that through. You have a convention every 5 years, you have a very irrational government, erratic government, volatile and violent. And we've got to go out now. So I tell you, live boldly, love better, laugh bigger, be encouraged, and never be complacent.